The feeling that standing in your power will harm others is not a feeling. It is a biological safety protocol that has been hijacked. In Scandinavia, there's a word for this program. It's called Jantelagen. It is an unwritten social code that boils down to one command. You are not to think that you are anyone special. Most people today treat it like a social curse or a handbrake on ambition. But forensically, it was originally a gift. In the old world, in the world of isolated farming communities, the ego was a threat to survival. If you tried to stand out, be better, or simply even make changes out of ego or a desire to be seen, you broke the coherence in the tribe. In a harsh winter, this kind of friction would kill a whole community. Original Jante law was a safety protocol. Stay grounded and protect the collective hardware. And for centuries, it kept the farmers alive. It was functional coherence. But here is where the audit gets dark. The hypnosis, the state, the church, the social chassis saw this beautiful survival instinct and they hijacked it. They realized that when they could keep you feeling ordinary, you would never challenge the architecture. They took your natural instinct to protect your tribe and redirected it to protect the system. Nowadays, Jantelagen is not used to save the village. It is used to police your inner truth. It is used to make sure you never vibrate at your own frequency. Because a sovereign human is a thing that a system cannot manage. The coherence was good. The hijack is the poison. You are not protecting your neighbors anymore. You are just maintaining your own prison. If the last video unsettled you, but you couldn't quite say why, this is what you're feeling. The wallpaper of your prison cell is ripping. The social contract that you followed so perfectly is being shredded by the very hand that wrote it. This is not a tragedy. It is your release. Scandinavia, you were once the masters of the horizon. You never asked for permission to move. You calculated the stars. You knew the weather. Today, you don't look at the stars. You look at the regulations. You have traded the infinite ocean and the farm life for a padded cell. And you call the padding security. How did this happen? You outsourced your soul. You gave the state the power to be your parent. And in return, it kept you a child. The Volkshemmet. The vision that was instated in the last century is not a home. It was a domestication project. You have been fed and managed until you forgot how to hunt. You check the law to see if you are good. And you check the news to see if you are safe. And now that the provider is failing, you have forgotten that you have teeth. Jantelagen is no longer your culture. It is your governor. It is the software lock that prevents your engine from hitting its true RPM. It tells you that thinking you are special is a sin. I tell you, thinking that you are ordinary is a lie. The Viking is not a historical costume. It is the human that, despite the violence of the Vikings, had more chance of operating from coherence level than the current Scandinavian. Stop seeking equality. At a table built by managers and reclaim your absolute sovereignty. The longship and the farm are still in your blood. Stop asking, is this allowed? And start asking, is this truth? The Volkshemmet was talked about as if it was a gift of progress. But to understand why the Swede accepted this padded cell, you have to look at the centuries that broke them. I look at Sweden today and I see abundance. There's berries half of the year. all the wildlife that lived here, all the nature, all the edible mushrooms. But in the 1800s, this was a landscape of cultural starvation. The church and the state demanded grain for taxes, a monoculture that could not survive the Nordic frost. And when the crops failed, the farmers and Vikings, they didn't just go hungry, they started eating bark bread. They ground the trees to stay alive, while the king's moose thrived in the woods where the farmers were not allowed to hunt. And this is where the drowning began. Brenvin was not a social drink, it was a biological mute button. When you are freezing and starving and watching your children weaken, 20 to 45 liters per year of hard spirits, it's not an addiction. It is a numbing technology. The Swedes did not love alcohol. They loved the disappearance of a reality that was too hard to carry. The state often paid workers in the 18th and 19th century in Sweden in spirits, not in money. Money would have kept the merchant soul alive, but alcohol kept the patient sedated. And by crossing over from grain, which did not go well in Sweden, to potatoes, which thrived, alcohol became easy to get and easy to make. This drowning made way for the parent state to take over. The Volkshemmet did not conquer a proud warrior. It offered a bowl of porridge to the man who had only been eating bark for 3 generations. The alcohol dependence you see today, the Friday night drowning in the suburbs, this is the echo of that era. You are still using the same chemical bypass to quiet the soul that knows it has traded the longship for a managed allowance. The Swede did not sell his soul because he was weak. He sold it because he was psychologically exhausted. But the hunger is still there. Only now it is the hunger for truth that no amount of state-sanctioned decency can fill. Why did the Scandinavians let the state and the church take it all? Why did a people who once navigated the stars and could farm with this weather and fare on their internal compass trade this all for a seat in a managed ward? It wasn't a military conquest, it was a strategic hijack. The kings in the 1500s, they realized they could not rule autonomous Vikings and farmers who followed a decentralized Odin religion. You cannot tax a man who answers only to his ancestors and his own honor. So the state here seized the church to create a monopoly of the soul. One God, one king, one ledger. They merged the crown with the pulpit to turn vertical sovereignty into vertical submission. But this hijack only worked because of one forensic truth. Responsibility is heavy. To be truly autonomous means that you are the absolute cause of your own life. There is no parent to blame, no system to fix you, and no God to carry your guilt. You are the architect, and every failure is yours to own. That weight is exhausting. Humanity has a biological glitch. We seek the path of least resistance. The church offered forgiveness and the state offered security. What they are actually selling is relief. Relief from the burden of self. They said, give us the key, we will tell you what is good. We will tell you what is safe, what is allowed. We will carry the responsibility. And you just follow the rules. You did not lose your autonomy. You donated it. You traded your teeth for permission. The social silence you see today, the empty streets of Sweden and the awkward eyes, it is the cost of that trade. You are physically safe, but your engine is cold, because you cannot have sovereignty without the weight. The bark bread era is gone. The hunger is over. So why are you still holding the hand of a parent who only wants you to stay small? The question was not whether you were capable of sovereignty, only whether you were willing to carry its weight. You don't live in a dictatorship, and you don't live in a free society. You live in a managed reality. You are allowed to choose, as long as your choices don't change the architecture. You are allowed to speak, as long as your words don't carry weight. You are allowed to live, as long as you do not take responsibility for the direction of your life. This all works because of the enchantment. It is a low-frequency hypnosis that turns compliance into decency. It makes the walls of the nursery look like a form of healthcare. It is the spell of the fox helmet, the promise that if you surrender your teeth, the parent state ensures that you will never have to feel the cold. This is not oppression, it is relief. Relief from being the absolute cause. Relief from having to stand without a parent. Relief from the weight of your own sovereignty. That is why it works. Not because people are weak, but because autonomy is heavy. And exhaustion makes the fog feel like safety. Nothing was taken from you. You donated your power in exchange for the relief of not having to choose. This is simply where you are standing. Join the circle. We don't heal the enchantment. We audit the escape mechanisms until the enchantment breaks. Link in the bio. In Scandinavia, the state and the church merged to create a vertical monopoly. They realized they could not rule autonomous Vikings, so they offered a trade. Give us the key to your life, and we will carry the weight of responsibility. The Scandinavians accepted because they were exhausted, broken by hunger, alcohol, and bark bread. They internalized the state, not as a partner, but as a parent. Bowing did not feel like surrender. It felt like decency. They traded their merchant sovereignty for a permanent, supervised allowance. But the Dutch, they ran a different code. The merchant soul and the polar mentality. For centuries, they did not look for a king to save them from the sea. They had to build dikes together. This is horizontal cooperation. You don't cooperate because you love or fear the manager. You do it because the water is real. And that, combined with the merchant soul, which survives by auditing the deal, the Dutch hardware glitches when a deal doesn't make sense. They are partners in a project, not subjects of the crown. The church never got as strong because it was fractured by friction. While Protestant and Catholic priests argued, merchants negotiated. The religious brainwash had a much harder time to take hold. Nevertheless, the dike is failing everywhere. Because since the last century, a new software appeared, one that bypasses negotiations entirely. It doesn't ask you to audit a deal. It asks you to confess guilt. It replaces horizontal trust with moral surveillance. In the Netherlands, this software currently wears the costume of wokeness. In other places, it uses different names, but the function is always the same. The woke program starting in the 60s with the provost, who still had some humor at least, and revived recently with a very humorless coat on. It is a virus designed to bypass the merchant logic. It doesn't ask you to negotiate. It asks you to repent. It attacks the very horizontal trust that kept the dikes standing. When you turn farmers into criminals, and your history into debt, and neighbors into moral judges, you destroy functional reality. The social silence in Sweden and the ideological wars in the Netherlands are the same hijack. One uses the parent to keep you a child, and the other uses guilt to turn a merchant into a penitent. Both kill the audit. The dike of rationality is failing. At what point did you stop auditing the deal and start accepting the terms?